Greetings, my name is Tim Johnston. This is Recovery, Strength, Hope and Courage. This video I want to talk about sort of 5 ways that perhaps we don't think about too often, which can keep us sober, especially in early sobriety, and even will help greatly if you're ready to make that change and you're still in addiction, whether it be drugs or alcohol, and you're ready to make that change. These things will perhaps help you certainly getting through withdrawal and in early recovery in particular, and later on and strengthen your recovery along the way and keep you sober. And that's the idea of that, to keep you sober, because many times in my sort of 35 to 40 years of addiction, I relapsed, and perhaps it was because I didn't think and know how to deal with some of the things I want to talk about today. And these aren't things that I talked about in my previous videos, which are truly important as well, such as living in service and forgiveness and gratitude and dealing with the past and all these things, and sort of physical well-being and diet and nutrition, exercise. These are all truly very important and integral to recovery, and habits and routines that you build in as you go along, and have to maintain your sobriety, in my opinion anyway, certainly for me anyway. These other things today are things that I've discovered along the way really, and thought about along this last 18 months that perhaps I didn't think about previously, and that took me back into addiction many times, because I'd not considered them or used them as a tool or whatever. Please subscribe to this channel if you like it as well, and hit the like button, because more people see this, and I thank everyone for their support along the way here, because the channel's growing slightly and slowly along the way. And if it's helping anyone out there, any of you out there, getting anything at all from it, that's the only reason I do this, and I'm delighted that if you are. So let's talk about these 5 things. Number 1, I've called dealing with life. That sounds quite a grandiose and massive thing to talk about, but let's try for some examples. A close relative, all these things might be happening to you all at once. You might be early in your sobriety, you might be going into withdrawal, you might be in a situation where you want to change, or you're pretty precarious in your sobriety at this moment in time, and you're wondering why and what's going on. All of a sudden a close relative or a friend gets seriously ill. Your kids are playing up. One of them might be in trouble at school. You might be having problems at work. Someone close to you might have shit on you, basically done the dirty on you. You might have financial problems and all sorts of stresses and strains going on in your life, and things bombarding you for all over the place. But I don't mean to sound trite here or blasé about any of those things, but yes, they happen to all of us, and life happens, and the first thing you have to do in early sobriety in particular, and along the way in your sobriety, is learn to accept life. It's acceptance. It's accepting that there's a lot of things in our life, that life happens around us, and that and it's like in the Serenity Prayer, isn't it? We've got to learn to accept the things we cannot change. And a lot of these things you can change. All right, there are things a lot of these things we can't change, and we don't have any control on. And they happen to us, and life happens around us. So we have to learn to deal with it without turning to our normal crutch, which would be alcohol and drugs. It certainly was in my case. I mean, I had a really stressful job. I had all these things happening around me, young children, and all these stresses and strains. And I used to feel a bit like, I was filling up with stress, until all of a sudden my head exploded, and I needed to drink or use drugs to put that to one side, and as a valve, like as a safety valve, and forget about all the troubles and things were going on in my life at this particular moment in time, and in that time. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same, or have felt the same. The thing is, it doesn't work, does it? And you know that, and I know that. And there's an old proverb, isn't there? It's one of my favourite sayings. Life's not about waiting for the storm to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain. And that's what it is. It's about learning to dance in the rain. And that's what I've learned in this period of my sobriety, because things have happened along my way as well. Perhaps not the stresses that were happening earlier on in my life, because I don't have a lot of that happening to me anymore. I won't allow it to happen. But there are stresses and strains, and you have to find new ways of dealing with them, and you have to take a breath and breathe and use the tools of meditation and exercise and diet and nutrition and all those other tools that you learn along the way. But most of all, you have to have acceptance that life is always going to happen around you. It does happen. Life changes all the time. Change, and bad things happen and good things happen, and they will continue to happen. So you have to accept that, and you have to not use it as an excuse to take you back into drink and drugs, because I can guarantee you one thing, that the next day, those problems, whatever they are, will be 100 times worse after you've drunk and used drugs, because you'll have all the self-hatred, the regret, the recriminations. The problem will still be there. You haven't solved it. So acceptance. Learn to live life and learn to accept that life's going to happen, and you've got to be strong and deal with it and find new ways and new outlets to control that and your stress. So stress relief and all these other things. I won't go into them in depth. I've gone into them in my other videos. Please look back at those. Number 2, avoiding triggers. And again, that sounds simple, but you'd be amazed, that how quickly things can sort of spark your mind into obsessing and craving drink and drugs, or your drink and drug of choice. When those triggers happen, those unconscious triggers, you may not even know that it's happened, and something will spark off. It might be people, places, and situations, I like to call it. So the first thing I did was lose those people, and it sounds bad, but lose those people from your life that are going to take you back. So in the it might be something as bad as sort of drugs dealers. It might be friends who are in the same situation, and your drinking buddies or your drug using buddies and all the rest of it. It might be places that you go to that remind you, and places where you can get the things you used to get easily. All these triggers and situations that perhaps you would have drunk in and used before, you have to avoid. You have to be conscious all the time. You have to be in your sobriety. You have to watch out for these things and be aware that they can happen. And if they do happen, by accident, you have to create. You have to sort of divert your mind away from them. You have to be strong and change that thought in your mind. For instance, as I've said before, the chemist was always one for me with buying tramadol over here. When I was hooked on tramadol, because you can buy them in the chemist, I had to create new associations there. I would go in there and I'd buy vitamin pills, so it becomes a good association. The same with the corner shop, which was where I used to get cheap alcohol from, because it's 60 cents a litre of wine. Now the only association I have in there is fresh fruit and vegetables. That's me, and I've changed my whole circle of the people I mix with now and the places I go to. And so avoid those triggers, avoiding triggers, becoming aware of your triggers, because we're all different, and your triggers might be totally different than my triggers. Number 3, the forked path. I like to call it the forked path, and I've talked about this before, and this might be something that you think of before you make the change. Or if you're wobbling and if you're thinking of going back and you're thinking of drinking or using again, create the fork path in your mind and shut your eyes for a minute. And you've got the left-hand path is the path of the next few years. If you continue to use or drink again and you go back to using drink and drugs, or you continue to use drink and drugs. And the right-hand path is the path that would take you down if you stop using drink and drugs or resist the temptation to use drink and drugs again. And you have to think about those impacts of those two directions. So the left-hand path of using again on your relationships, on your loved ones, your children, your career, your finances, your health, your well-being, your happiness, you name it, the many myriads of things that are affected by drink and drugs. So the left-hand path is the path that you'll be going down if you continue, and how it'll disintegrate and all go to shit. And the right-hand path is the path that if you grit your teeth and you get on with it and you continue on that path, will bring you happiness and joy and the thousands of gifts that sobriety will bring you along the way, with undoubtedly, and that goes for everyone out there. Number 4, the power of the mind. I've talked about this many times, and the mind is the greatest tool that you will have in your sobriety. There's no doubt about it. It's the number one. If you can control that, you know, you can't change your behaviour. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. You know, it's simple as that. You have to alter that mind. The power of the mind is so important. So visualization becomes very important. Visualizing your success becomes very important. Your mindset becomes extremely important. Again, I've talked about that in more depth in previous videos. Your habits, you know, the change of your habits, neuroplasticity I talked about in the last video. You know, you're changing the habits from bad to good, so the good habits become habitual. The power of the mind, visualizing where you'll be in the next few years if you continue on this path, how your life will grow and expand, and your happiness will grow and expand. You know, what you think you become. It's as simple as that. Yeah, you know, and it's not easy, but it's your greatest tool, so use it. Number 5, finally, this is a really important one, taking responsibility. Taking responsibility for your own actions. How many of us have done that in the past when we were in addiction? Taking responsibility for your life, embracing the change, if you like, knowing that you have to change, knowing that it's your responsibility. I like to think of something called the 1 meter rule. So it's where you stretch out your hands 1 meter around your body, basically, where you can reach. Everything you put into your body is your responsibility, and everything that happens to you really from that 1 meter round is your responsibility. You create that reality. It's your responsibility what you put into your mouth, what you put into your arm, what comes within that 1 meter is your responsibility, and you can affect the change by affecting that. It's simple as that, and taking responsibility for that, and for what goes into your body, and for your mindset, and for your sobriety, for your health, for all of it, you know, for your situation, if you like, you know, however good or bad it is. Take responsibility, because if you don't take responsibility for it and become blasé about it, you know, your sobriety won't last. It's as simple as that. You will go back and use again. Simple as that. So you have to embrace change. I mean, there's no quick fix to this. It's simple as that. No quick fix. You know, this takes time and effort. And the final question you should ask yourself, the final question, it's really number 6 really, but it's the most important question. Do you want it? Do you want to change? Do I want to change? Do I want this shit for the rest of my life? Do I want my life to disintegrate? Do I want to die? Do I want to lose all the things and people I love? Do I want to lose my self-respect, my dignity, my pride? Do I want to stop continuing to be a human being and experience the precious gift of human consciousness and life, and the precious gift of breath and heartbeat that is so fleeting? And I hate to sound dramatic, but that is what will happen. So do you want it or don't you want it? Only you know the answer to that question. It's simple as that. Because many times in the past, I thought I wanted it, but I didn't, did I? Because I wouldn't have ended up at 55 years old, still there, still in addiction, but worse than I ever was, almost dead. I wouldn't have ended up there if I'd really wanted it. So you have to ask yourself honestly that question and answer it honestly. Do I really want this? So much I can taste it, because it's going to be painful. You know, if you alter your life, any changes is going to be painful. It's simple as that. You know, any change for the better, if your habits have not been good, is going to be painful. Doesn't matter what it is. So, belief in yourself. Finally, belief in yourself. If you believe you can do this, or if you believe you can't do this, you're right. It's what Henry Ford said, isn't it? And I've used it a lot, that saying. If you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. So believe you can. Believe you can do this, because you can do this. You can. If I can do it at my time of life and with the background I've had, then you can definitely do it. Don't fall backwards. Use these tools, use these thoughts, use all the other things I've talked about in my other videos and many other people talk about. Look at other videos, get as much knowledge as you can, and beat this for your own sake, because there's only one way you'll go. If you don't, you will die and lose everything. It's simple as that. So until next time, carpe diem, seize the day, embrace change, accept that life, accept the life you have, because it's you can't, you know, but you can change. You can change. Anybody can. Much love to you all. Bye bye.